Alright guys, it's Bill Sylvia here. Time to talk about Green Lantern. I really don't have as much to say about this as I might. That's why I'm not doing a full scripted review. I'm not starting this out with the oath. I've got my text review, which will be linked in the description. This is basically for people who follow my Blip channel or follow YouTube that don't really follow my text reviews. So with that said, Green Lantern. Where do I begin with Green Lantern? Fantastic Four 2, Rise of the Silver Surfer. That's where I'd like to begin with Green Lantern. Which is also why I think there's going to be a shitty sequel to this. But, alright, what do I mean? Basically, the first third of the movie is the movie in the trailers. The decent trailers. The good effects are all in the first third of the movie. The good writing is, Ryan Reynolds as Hal Jordan is mostly written well, except when they try to be funny. They're like, oh my god, it's Ryan Reynolds, let's write some funny lines in there. Half of them don't work because that's not what the plot is going for. You're writing Ryan Reynolds instead of Hal Jordan. While we're talking on characters, Carol Ferris? No. No, she's not Carol Ferris. She's Blake Lively being random generic love interest. The sad thing is, random generic love interest, who is not Carol Ferris, is responsible for saving Hal's life. And, yeah, that pretty much says something. That random generic character with little in the way of being an interesting character is saving the hero's life. I mean, maybe I'm being too harsh on not Carol Ferris, but I mean, she does have some business, she does some business stuff off screen, saves a contract, so she's got some intelligence, but it's not displayed in the film. They tell us about it, but they don't show it to us. The most we see of her is basically, I actually think, I forget who specifically it was in the Stone Gremlins review. I don't think it was Brad, I think it was one of the other guys. It was basically like, maybe it was Brad. It was basically like she comes across more as a sister to him. It's like they dated in high school or college or something. They've known each other since they were kids. And that's how she doesn't act like his boss. She doesn't act like a girlfriend, an ex-girlfriend. She acts like a sister. I mean, there are times when it's, more of an obvious ex-girlfriend vibe. She never really acts like his boss, which is why I say she's not Carol Ferris at all. So she might not be as bad as, as a character, she might not be as bad as she's portrayed, but just going by what's on screen and not what takes place off screen, you don't get more bland and generic. As for the story, well, they try to take all the basic elements of a Green Lantern origin story, most notably Emerald Dawn, because Emerald Dawn is the only one that has all the elements: the training, the dealing with the crisis. The crisis takes place on Earth, so it's a little bit of secret origin. And of course, it's got Abin Sur and everything, so there's that bit from the showcase origin. But it's not a good origin story. The conflict is tied into the origin. In Emerald Dawn, there was a yellow alien that kills Abin Sur. Hal Jordan trains and then ends up being the main one responsible for fighting the alien that kills Abin Sur. And that alien is also what he fights on Earth. Kills his friend. There's all that personal conflict as well as the epic conflict. The love interest, the romantic conflict is not as involved in Emerald Dawn. Actually, the romantic conflict is not in any of the origin stories. Yes, there's references, I think the showcase origin, at the end of the book, they introduce the romantic conflict, but it's not a major theme, and it's not part of a drawn out origin either. In this, the romantic conflict, well, it's not even a conflict really, it's he shows up, is like, oh, by the way, I'm Green Lantern, you know, I'm going to kiss you and give you a necklace, and now we're dating out of nowhere. You know, Lois Lane wasn't contrived enough with the whole balcony interview thing. We need to do this. So, the main villain is a mixture between, they call him Parallax. He's obviously Krona from Green Lantern, you know, the guy responsible for creating the antimatter universe, but at the same time, it's Galactus from Fantastic Four #2. Even Elface from Fight Evil was discussing this with me last night. By the way, this is a couple days after seeing the movie. I was going to record this last night, but I got into a long, involved 5-hour conversation, so I wasn't about to do this at 5 o'clock in the morning. But it's basically, if you take... Well, actually, no, it wasn't Elface. I'm sorry. It was Derailer. So, anybody who visits Fight Evil will know who Derailer is. So, they take Galactus, the Cloud Galactus, make him yellow. That's at the beginning of the movie. Toward the end, it's more like Cthulhu and Mr. Hanky's love child, with some yellow involved. You know, there's that bit of Parallax. He feeds off of fear. But his actual body is Krona as possessed by, a Guardian as possessed by Parallax. And for some reason that's not explained, he tries to turn Hector Hammond into an evil Guardian, into a clone of himself, which has nothing to do with Hector Hammond's his comic story, has nothing to do with Parallax's comic story, has nothing to do with Parallax's goals in the movie. It just happens because they wanted to connect the origins of these two completely unrelated characters. Poorly. Hector Hammond. He is one of the upsides of this movie. He's not written in any way related to anything in the comics. Really, the only thing relating him to the comics is that he is balding and that he is a telepath. That's really the only connection between Hector Hammond in the comics, Hector Hammond in the movie. Other than that, he was acted really well. I forget. Sarsgaard, I believe is the actor's name. He does a very good job of acting the character he's given. He doesn't act the character in the comics, but as for the script he's given, the humble, mostly humble, college professor type person. He, never went on to accomplish anything, but he's a scientist, a xenobiologist even though the Earth has never seen an alien. He plays this character very well. The typical bachelor parts of him. There are some filler scenes involving him, but what they really do is show how well he's being played to match the script. He doesn't rise. You can't really rise above the material in a film like this because the script is so pointless at times, but he's really the shining star of the film. Ryan Reynolds does a very good job when they give him good material, but when they give him comedy material, it's shit. So even though it's not Reynolds' fault, it's kind of a hit against Reynolds because he doesn't have the same flawless record in this movie that Sarsgaard does, just because he can't take that comedy and make it sound decent. So I've gotten the effects, I've gotten Hal Jordan, Parallax, Sinestro. Sinestro was alright. The actor did not accomplish what he wanted to do. He wanted to hint at what Sinestro would become, but at the same time, the plot is completely skipping over that. If you watch after the credits, spoiler kind of here, Sinestro is a good guy until he puts on a yellow ring and he turns evil. That's the most ridiculous fall to evil I've ever seen. And from a character as complex as Sinestro, the character who in an effort to purge evil from society, created a fascist regime on his planet. You know, from a character like that, who, you know, the character who to this day, his goal is still to recreate the Green Lantern Corps in his image in order to create perfect order in the universe. When you look at the character that way, they really did him a disservice. He was a decent hero. You know, you could definitely see the arrogance. You could see his skill. You could see him as a hero in that vein. You know, the arrogant hero. You know, the type of hero who would say, you know, by you inheriting my mentor's ring, you are insulting him because you can't live up to him at all. You know, which, you know, that's classic Sinestro. You know, that is how he first, well, in the latter versions of the character, Emerald Dawn 2 and everything else, the ones in which Sinestro knew Hal as a Green Lantern, that is sort of how the relationship started. He just thought Hal was useless and completely weak, and then eventually grew on to become friends and to be close with him. So that is true to the character. What is not true to, well, this is an issue with a lot of comic movie origins. They just rush through it. He's going from the hero of the Green Lantern Corps to being Sinestro of the Sinestro Corps in no time flat. So you can't develop a relationship between characters in that amount of time. I've seen complaints like that about First Class, about how Xavier and Magneto pretty much never have the time to develop the relationship that we know them to have. It's like movies feel the need to rush through this and slap it together and get it on the screen. What else do I have to say about this movie? It's somewhat enjoyable. I mentioned some good things. I enjoyed watching some stuff on Oa and be like, oh, that's Sally. Oh, that's Sten. Oh, that's Hanu. Well, a terrible CGI representation of Hanu. You know, looking at other characters. Oh, is that Boudica? Is that this? Is that? So, I enjoyed that. The average person who's not an avid Green Lantern reader wouldn't give a fuck about that. So it's kind of hard to factor that into the score. It would barely be maybe 0.1 of a point out of 10 if it factors in. Which, by the way, I rated this movie a 4 out of 10 in my text review. Don't really do a rating in a vlog, but I did rate this movie 4 out of 10. Is there anything else I need to say for you to really get the impression of this movie? Poor dialogue, slap together characters, mishmashes of unrelated characters that are combined into the same character. It does have all the elements involved in, say, particularly Emerald Dawn. It makes the gestures, but it doesn't do them well. It's like a wannabe general that makes a big speech or tries to make a big speech, but completely fails at inspiring anybody. It makes all the right moves, but it doesn't know how to make any of them. Or if it does, it just pulls them off completely wrong. It definitely does not live up to the Green Lantern mythos. It definitely does not live up to the comic movies Marvel has been making. It's interesting. People mention how, well, really Watchmen and The Dark Knight are really the only things DC can pull off very well with comic book movies lately. Of course, they're better than anything Marvel came up with. Sorry, I had to take Ruin there. Had to cut off a bit. It makes all the gestures to be a grand movie, but is unable to meet the epic scale, unable to live up to Marvel movies, which are mostly in the good to very good range, as compared to DC's had its occasional great movie, but mostly poor to mediocre ones. So if you follow that, that's not even true, because Marvel has Fantastic Four and Fantastic Four 2. But this is definitely more along the lines of Fantastic Four, Spider-Man 3, Fantastic Four 2. One thing I do have to say, Ryan Reynolds and Jim Carrey now have two things in common. Badly CGI'd green masks and being in a bad superhero movie wearing green. So I don't know, that might be a feather in Ryan Reynolds' cap. Other than that, that's about all I've got to say about Green Lantern. Told you it wouldn't be that interesting of a vlog. If you want to see my thoughts a bit more streamlined, coherently, put together with a bit more put together completely, check out my text review, link in the description. Man in Black out.